there will always be something. So I own House of Three. We're an architectural firm that produces BCIN licensed pre-designed and custom plans. We specialize in secondary suites and new home construction. My background is actually in new home construction. In 25 years, I'm somewhere over 1,000 houses at this point for new homes. I did 600 when I worked for Green Homes. So, so I am a graduate from Loyalist and Sheridan. I have a project management certificate in architectural technician programs. I took civil engineering for part of it. I own House of Three and co-own Three Step Property Management. I also own BLT Land Holdings. I am fully licensed through the BCIN program and hold certificates from the AATO and the OBOA. The OBOA being the Ontario Building Officials Association, because I also worked for the City of Kingston for a very long 6 years. And I am a real estate investor. I've used to flip houses actually, and that's, Kingston is an amazing market for flipping houses, or it used to be. So I used to basically double my money, which was amazing, and live in the house that I was flipping. Now that I have a son, though, it's a lot harder, although he is well-versed in construction sites at this point. I was also a professor for a Loyalist in the architectural, civil, construction, and renovation programs. And I was an architectural designer for Green Homes and an architectural firm, Realtors Designs, which closed 2 weeks after I graduated from college. And I did kitchen design for Home Depot. I'm also on the board with CFDC and with the AATO. So my life is a little insane. So we have a team. There are currently 6 of us. Suzanne's here tonight. Brenna, Brandon, and Zach are all our designers. And Laura and Suzanne handle the office work. So BCIN is a building code identification number. It was introduced about 24 years ago. About a year after I graduated from college, they basically declared our diplomas null and void, and you had to go back to school and write all these exams. So because I was a building inspector, I have all of my qualifications, which there's actually a very small percentage of us that have everything. I don't do septic, although technically I'm qualified. It's an insurance thing, and honestly, it sucks.
It's shady.
It is. I was trying to be polite for once. But it's like $4,000 a year in insurance, and honestly, I just don't care enough about it. There are some things I don't do because of insurance. So design insurance alone was $6,500 this year, and that's not business insurance, that's just designer insurance. Designer insurance, they have a monopoly. There's 3 underwriters across the province. Because I have everything, I'm limited to 1. So, which is fun. So basically they set the price and I pay it. So there is required mandatory proof of insurance for all designers. So we have to pay registration fees annually, and I have to actually provide a certificate that I can't get until 30 days before I have to renew my license. So there's always this mad scramble at the end, which is lots of fun. Triplexes, so this is a big difference that I'm gonna go through a little bit tonight. The second we hit more than 2 units, you require a small building qualification, which knocks out a lot of designers. For us, we were able to just kind of continue on easily. There's different levels of categories of qualifications, and you are required to have a BCIN designer, architect, or PEng on every project that is not your primary residence, according to the Ontario Building Code. And even then, there's some projects I can't do, so I'm licensed for commercial. There are certain projects I'm not permitted to do because I'm not an architect, I'm a technologist. So in addition to that, we do expert witness services, building code analysis, and zoning checks. My zoning checks are limited to, it meets the criteria A, B, and C, and that's it. I'm not a planner, and I don't do minor variances. I work with partners for that. We work with either FO10 or the Boulevard Group, depending on schedules and depending on the client.
What do you mean by expert witness services?
So I have provided witness statements for different court cases, essentially. So when one of the property management firms decided that they didn't like 8-bedroom rule, when Kingston introduced that and they tried to appeal it, I was brought on board and paid to do a bit of an analysis. I ended up not having to go. They actually decided it wasn't worth the funding because nobody else would back them and help them out with the funding. They thought more would get on board with the 8-bedroom limit and trying to squash that, and they didn't. My fees on it were something like $3,000. They were, I think with all the witnesses they were having to pay, they were somewhere around $20,000, plus all the fees and everything else. So they did end up stopping and just going, you know what, if nobody else is gonna fight it, we won't either. Which is too bad, because they probably would have won. But it's an expensive endeavor. So why create an additional dwelling unit? Additional income, build your portfolio, stabilized income, first home helper, and combat the housing shortage, help family aging in place, reuse or unused or underused housing. So the underused housing, Ben bought one that was a hoarding situation that sat empty for, we don't know how long.
Yeah, so long it had no water, hydro, anything left, it was all
Yeah.
gone, everything's gone.
He bought it as a duplex, and then he lets me do things sometimes, and I was like, we should turn it into a triplex, so we did.
That's very
So it is, sometimes there is opportunity there that you might not even be expecting. So we actually converted on that one, the double car garage that was attached to the 3rd unit, and now he has a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 1-bedroom that all rented before it even actually went on the market. So stabilized income though, just to what Kazi was saying, one of the reasons to do 3 units or 4 units versus 2 is the stabilized income. Because right now, we all know that at duplex, quite often, the 2 rentals do not cover the mortgage, let alone expenses. And then if one stops paying, you're screwed. So having 3, quite often, you'll get 2 out of 3 paying at least, or you might be able to actually make cash flow, heaven forbid. So it is, the stabilized income can be a great help. So why legalize an existing ADU? Life safety. So when I was a building inspector, the average annual deaths due to fire across the province was 60. Last year was over 124. So they are cracking down, and they're cracking down big time. The city of Kingston and the fire department are no longer, we used to do plan reviews together and work together on a project and take it to completion for new construction. They're not doing that right now because the fire department's too busy. And they've pulled all the plan reviewers off of it, and now they issue orders on just about everything. And the city actually has a task force right now in the building department for illegal construction, and they've been going after people more than I've ever seen, in all honesty. We are getting calls probably weekly with trying to legalize something that somebody's gotten an order on. Insurance is another reason. You can get cheaper insurance if they're legal, if you have an occupancy permit, so that's always fun. And some of the insurance companies, mine is actually getting very particular. They won't insure me until I have that occupancy permit to create a legal unit, or at the end of a legal unit. The BRRRR strategy, so the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat strategy. Typically for refinancing, they want your occupancy permit and they want to see the building permit. Avoiding tenant complaints. Honestly, I've kind of come to the conclusion that tenants will never not complain, but they have less leg to stand on. So it does make a difference. And usually, Fern will tell you, I can usually talk the fire inspector down if there was an occupancy. And we have a working relationship with them that when there's an occupancy that's been issued, quite often we can kind of talk our way out of things or into lesser things. And avoiding charges. So the cost of illegal construction is expensive. It's actually dictated in the building code. You could be fined for up to $500,000. So avoid it. So the definitions of things, I'm gonna glaze through these a little bit, but this is the bulk of the changes and they're important as far as the zoning bylaw goes. So an accessory house is an accessory building that is used for the purpose of one dwelling unit, which is accessory to the house, semi-detached house, or townhouse in the urban area. That's what investors refer to as ADUs. So the detached ADU that's in a garage or in a detached house on the same property. So what they used to call an additional residential unit, they have changed to additional rural unit. And so it only applies to properties north of the city. I'm not gonna cover those a whole lot tonight, other than just be aware that you can do them north of the city, but you need to prove that your septic and well can handle the additional capacity. It's an extra step, it's an extra expense, and not very many people are willing to do it, because it usually means replacing your septic unit or modifying your septic system, which that alone could be 60 grand easily. And so a second residential rural unit is of course an additional one, same with the third. It's the third one and it's just a chronological order. I don't know why they need to spell out that it's chronological, but they do. So an affordable unit, and this is important because there is some grant money. Basically, an affordable unit is income-based and it's rent out based on income. It's less than average market rent. It has to be an arm's length to the landlord for the tenant, so you're not renting to family. And it's an affordable unit, it's secured through an agreement registered on title. And the affordability term is set for minimum of 20 years. So most investors will never use this program and do affordable unit, and that's okay. The more legal units at market value that are out there, the more the illegal units will be forced to either do below market rents or legalize, one or the other.
So you cannot rent to family.
For affordable units.
How can they prove it?
If your name's different.
Just a friend.
Yeah, it's registered on title.
It's arm's length.
Yeah, but it's only the affordable units. And I don't know how much they're really looking at that with the grant program. You heard John Henderson say, like, they don't have a lot of uptake.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure that you would have too much of an issue, but it's hard to
I
say.
think 55 or 45% of the building needs to be occupied as affordable unit. I think, 45 maybe.
So a lot of this has changed. So it's not necessarily, I'm not gonna cover big buildings. I didn't even look at that in, there's a couple hundred pages worth of documents. But you are right, like when you get into the high-rise situation, it's a percentage. And sometimes there's offsets that can be done.
So we did a Travelodge in Kingston Crest building,
Yeah.
right on Princess.
Okay.
So 112 rooms were changed to units.
Yes. Yeah, and that could have been though, so sometimes when they do a zoning change, because I believe that was a zoning
Yes.
change, right?
Yes, yes.
Sometimes you have to agree to more.
Yeah.
As part of the zoning change.
Yeah.
So I don't know the particulars, I'm just guessing, but the affordability thing depends on what's happening in the city at the time, unfortunately. But, so apartment building, they've changed the definition to mean a multi-unit residential building, not otherwise defined. And what you're gonna notice, and I just put it in here, they've deleted duplex, they've deleted single detached house, and they've deleted triplex from the zoning bylaw. It's now additional dwelling units, period. They're just going under one thing. So a house is a ground-oriented residential building that's not limited to a single detached duplex, triplex, row house, tiny house, mobile home, or other similar. And a lot means a single piece of land, and residential use is a dwelling unit or a co-living unit. And semi-detached, that really hasn't changed. Basically, you can put the lot line down the center of the house and two different owners. But, so this I actually cut and paste so you can see their little diagram, but they've given a picture of what each one means. But a residential building is a house, semi-detached house, townhouse, stacked townhouse, apartment building, or mixed use containing a dwelling unit. So everything from triplex, duplex is just considered a house from a zoning standpoint. And stacked townhouse is just one above the other for 5 or more dwellings. Tiny house is mobile, portable, and a townhouse is 3 or more side by side. So second and third units. So this has changed a little bit. So the good news is our old red zones and yellow zones that we used to deal with are greatly reduced. So the sewer surcharge capacity issues, a lot of them, they're gonna resolve on the building code side of things. So there used to be areas where we could not put a second or third or fourth unit, no matter what. Did not matter what you wanted to do, what you wanted to pay, you couldn't do it. They're gonna let them happen. So, other than on Lowborough Lake, Capacity Lake, if it's within a basement or a basement story, in it, because we still have a few red, yellow, purple zones, so sewer surcharging or combined storm and sewer zones. You can do it, but if it's in the basement story, it has to have at least one habitable room on the main floor or second floor. So that they're calling it an area of refuge. So if your basement unit floods, they have one room up above. And they're not allowing us to use a foyer. It has to be a bedroom, a kitchen, a living room, an actual physical room. But you can do it, which is nice. So what's that?
We do a vertical split.
You could do a vertical split, absolutely, or even just reserving one room, which sometimes works in our favor, because sometimes that one room will get us from the exterior door to the staircase to the basement. Right? So if it's a central staircase in the past, we've either had to put a walkout in, or walk down in, or put a hallway in. If we had a hallway plus a bedroom or a living room, all of a sudden, we meet this rule and we can get to the central staircase. So all those houses in Henderson Place suddenly work. Yes.
So did the city update the K-map?
Yes.
Oh, great. I didn't notice.
Yes. I found it at 10:30 last night.
Amazing.
There.
I have a property for sale that has an in-law suite.
That
It's
you
not
can
legal and
legalize.
it's in the red zone, so I'm gonna check.
So the red zones used to like almost fill this map, and we're down to these little tiny areas, which makes me so happy. And these tiny little areas are just where we have to have that one area of refuge.
So they're green now as long as you have that area of refuge?
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of those big bungalows that haven't been updated since the 50s in Henderson Place, all of a sudden we can use. And a lot of them have 2 staircases.
What did the colors mean again? Sorry, you brought me.
Yeah, that's okay. So red is a sewer surcharge, so it's a known area where the sewer lines will back up into the house. There is, so we're gonna have to put backwater valves on them, and we have to do this area of refuge, but they can be done. The purple, I believe, is storm, does the same thing, and then the yellow is the combined sewer and storm in the town core. This is not shocking, like this stuff is over 100 years old. You're always gonna have issues there until it gets replaced.
You can still do it now.
You can still do it. So, yeah,
They're desperate.
I'm
Units.
probably most excited for this,
Yeah.
just because that's a whole big area that used to be priced at around 500, 550. A lot of it has detached garages and a lot of it has 2 staircases. So all of a sudden, to be able to do that area is amazing. The third residential unit, same thing, same map. We're still gonna have the same constraint area. So those areas have to have the area of refuge and they need a backwater valve. But they're making us put backwater valves on everything, so just go with it. So this was where I got confused with the city presentations. I thought all lots could have up to 12 bedrooms. They cannot. The 12-bedroom rule does not kick in until 4th unit. So we are limited to 8 for units 1, 2, 3, and then the second you put that 4th in there, you can have 12 bedrooms, except in certain areas, which will eventually be on a map from what I understand, but in the downtown core essentially, there's certain areas that can only be 10. So this, believe it or not, from what I understand, this is what held up the bylaw for several months with the changes, is that the people that actually live in the Queen's Ghetto, personally, didn't want the 4th unit and didn't want 12 bedrooms because they're already having a problem with the parties. So adding additional people to a lot can be an issue. So they kicked up a fuss, there was a certain area, they finally reached an agreement that will just limit things in that area. It kind of makes sense.
So that's bedrooms, it's not max occupants?
That's bedrooms.
Okay.
Fire code is 2 people per bedroom.
Oh, really? Okay.
If you identify as polyamorous.
Whatever number of
Whatever
people you put in there is 2 per bedroom. So if you have 3, you can have 6, and they can do however they want to live, they can live. But you are limited to 2 per bedroom. If there's a complaint, they can go in and there's an issue too, you gotta watch with boarding houses. So if everybody's on an individual lease, it could be claimed a boarding house, which is a whole different set of rules. You don't want that, 1 lease. Get everybody on 1 lease, and then you're no longer a boarding house. So the 4th units. So with 4 units, there is a area established as a fourth residential unit holding area. And I'm kind of giggling here because until you see it, you'll understand. They basically declared the whole city a holding unit. But basically, you need to be able to prove that there's adequate servicing capacity, which is water, wastewater, natural gas, and electrical for the proposed development. So it's gonna be an extra step. It's gonna be a planning application. I talked to my planners this afternoon just to confirm. You could do it yourself. They will basically project manage it to get it through faster. You could try and do it yourself. It'll probably, anybody I've seen try to do it themselves has basically given up and hired a planner to begin with and just gone that route. It's just faster, and by the time you fill out or figure out your holding costs, you're probably about the same. But basically, an engineer is gonna say that based on the data provided by Utilities Kingston or Hydro or Union Gas, there's enough capacity for this address to have 4 units.
So you would never be able to know before you put an offer on the house?
Correct. Yeah, and the downfall is because it's capacity based, the problem with capacity based is that you might be able to have it and a year later, your neighbor might not be able to have it because it may have reached capacity with adding that one.
Oh, yeah.
So think of but there's ways around it, there's ways to mitigate it. Things like the natural gas, how many people are putting natural gas furnaces in all 4 units? Never. You're gonna leave the one gas furnace, or you're gonna remove it, and you're gonna go to electrical. And there's less
I
capacity.
can't on that property, but,
Okay, well,
and it's now electric.
Yeah. But we're typically seeing one unit gets the gas furnace that's already existing, and all the others are going electric or mini splits. So as far as the gas capacity is concerned, it's gonna be a non-issue. The electrical capacity could be an issue, but you could call the electricians. I would just recommend talking to your electrician. And as far as water and wastewater is concerned, there's things we can do to stop it. 1 bathroom per unit, for instance. Don't put dishwashers in instead, because it's all based on the number of fixture units. You add a dishwasher, you up your fixture units. So, I mean, you obviously still have to provide a bathroom, you still have to provide a kitchen, but, you know, it might mean that because of the capacity, even though we prefer to have separate laundries in each unit, we have to go to 1 laundry that's shared. There's ways to mitigate it and deal with it. The early uptake, I'm not worried about this one for the most part. As things go on, especially if you're not in the downtown core. If you're in the downtown core, there may be an issue, just because it is 100 years old. But it could be an issue a year or 2 years down the road if there's a lot of uptake. I am seeing a lot of uptake. It took a while for people to get onto 3rd units. The 4th unit, we are already working on number 5, I think. So there's been already a lot more uptake, considering it's only been a month. And it's not even officially released because they haven't figured out how to post everything yet. But there is a note that there is a limitation in the number of plumbing fixtures. They actually wrote that into the bylaw, but they're doing it under the Ontario Building Code, which is good, so that we're not comparing one to the other. So 2nd, 3rd, and 4th building units, there's a couple ways you can do them. You can renovate an existing house, any floor, including the basement. We're doing a couple that are gonna be 4 units in the main house. We're doing some that are 3 and 1. I've done minor variances with our planning partners for 2 and 2. That one's gonna be probably a little harder. They're not gonna like that as much right now. You can build a new addition, you can convert an existing detached or attached garage, and you can build a new detached unit. And we have some pre-designed plans for that if you want. The thing with the detached dwelling unit, I know there are some prefab ones out there, which is lovely. It could save money. But if it doesn't meet the zoning bylaw, it could not save you money just as easily. Because you still have setbacks, lot coverage, and everything else to meet.
Monday I had a conversation with somebody who, they wanted to convert their garage into an ADU.
Yep.
And their architect told them they had to tear it down because the garage didn't have the proper footings.
Yeah.
According to the building code. Have you come across that? You know,
Haven't had to take one down yet? How many have you done then?
like, normally a garage is just built on a cement slab, right?
Yeah, as long as the slab's stable.
You haven't come across this whole footings issue?
No.
As long as there's a footing there, like it can't just be
It can't be
laid on
gravel.
nothing. But
Yeah,
if there's,
so
if
it's
there's
on a
block,
concrete slab,
it's on a concrete slab and there's block of some sort or a foundation of some sort, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. But King had a slab on grade at
No.
Friends.
Slab
Bit
on
of
grade,
fear.
block on, like I've done.
because that's the first I heard of that, I'm like, oh crap, this is something I need to know about.
No.
I'm gonna
No,
talk
it
to
might
Lisa.
just, might just be them trying to cover their ass probably and
So,
not knowing how to do it.
If it was in bad shape, because Scott had one in Belleville that was in bad shape, we just got an engineer to come in and do a fix on the slab and that was it.
Yeah, I've had to repair blocks before, but
Okay,
again, as long as it's not built on dirt.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's the same as a house, right? If the foundation, they see a big hole in the foundation, they're gonna make you
Yeah.
fix it, right? Same thing.
You ever heard of any footings in a garage?
No,
You might just not know how to draw it, that's all with it.
Okay.
we haven't had a problem.
Lisa,
Yeah.
in terms of the square footage for building a new addition, what's the maximum allowed and what's the dollar value we're talking about square footage?
Yeah, the addition is gonna depend on the zoning for the specific lot.
Okay.
So, and what's there, because you have maximum lot coverage, you have distances to the lot lines you can go.
Yeah.
So an addition totally depends, it's very lot specific.
Correct, but in general, is that 800 square foot? 500 square
The
foot?
benefit of an addition is most, not all, if we do it as an addition versus detached, we can usually go up to 3 stories. If it's a detached unit, we have a limit of 1 story.
And how about
So it
parking?
it depends.
How about parking for the additional unit? Do you have to provide parking?
Yes, we're gonna get to that, because the parking, they reduce the parking, which is awesome.
So another question about converting the garage, you're converting existing garage, but it doesn't meet the setback requirements.
They fixed it in the bylaw. It can stay where it is, as long as it's not on somebody else's lot.
Good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's fantastic, yeah, they just let my Normans go.
Yeah. So the way I was giggling is this is their holding overlay, so it's essentially the whole city on city services is 4 units, you have to get planning approval. So, but it's only at the 4th unit. And they had to release a map for this. That's where I was like, I have been waiting for an entire month for this map to come out for it to blanket the entire city.
Laziness.
So these, let's say we wanna do a 4th unit, but the area is saturated, but they're gonna say yes to every 3rd unit in the area.
Every 3rd unit is okay,
But
it's the
if you have the
4th.
4th one, you may reach capacity of the sewage.
You might.
But the 3rd unit, everybody can do it on the street.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Makes no sense.
Yeah. I know, but typically though,
Really, I mean, they're already laughing at us.
3 units though can typically be served by 3/4 inch water line from the street, which the majority of the city is 3/4 inch or 1 inch. So, and we can do it with 3/4 inch and then break off into what they call a manifold. So then you come in from the street, you have basically a pipe that goes to the 3 separate water meters and then it feeds each individual unit is a manifold. So we can do it on 3/4 inch, we can't with 4. Even with the 3/4 inch, with the 3rd unit, we are having to do fixture unit counts. There is some issues, I can't always add dishwashers, for instance. Which dishwashers are hit and miss, some investors love them, sometimes it's just one more appliance to fix, are you gonna stop doing a 3rd unit for a dishwasher? Probably not, right? You're just gonna do you're gonna go ahead and do your 3rd unit and forget about the dishwasher.
Double sink and right.
I know, add it later, like everybody else does.
Sorry, Lisa, so you're saying for 4, 1 is the minimum? 1 inch has to be there?
Pretty much, yes.
Not necessarily.
4 could bump you up to 1.5. So and actually, having said that, so 3 technically could bump you to 1 inch or higher, especially in new home construction, but new home construction has a whole different set of rules. If we're dealing with an existing water line from the street to the house, basically anything that wasn't built in the last 10-ish years will be 3/4 inch. Anything in the last 10 years is usually 1 inch. So, and there's some building code issues before 5 years and after 5 years that are differently dealt with. Most people in this room buy over 5 years old. most people in this room buy over 20 years old, right? So. There is a servicing allocation policy overlay, and again, it's the entire city. But so far, I haven't run into needing that. There's a non-residential conversion overlay, so these areas in here, you can't convert to residential, they're commercial. If you look at it, it's straight down Princess Street for the most part. It's your main thoroughfares. So parking, I love this. So we used to be 2.7 or 2.75 by 6 meters, and you used to have the last reduction was down to 2.6 by 6 meters, and you had to have 1 per unit. For the first 2 units, we're down to 1 parking space, legal parking space. You can supply more from a property management standpoint. I tell you to put more in. But from a functionality standpoint, as far as the zoning bylaw is concerned, we need 1. There is a couple of exceptions to that. So it has to be located in a private garage, driveway, or parking lot. It's permitted in tandem, which is front to back. Parking lots are only permitted in a rear yard or interior yard. Side yard, not on a corner, is what an interior yard means. So, Fern, I know you ran into this. We used to be able to take a driveway, put a parking pad in the backyard, and that was our parking area, and the driveway could overlap. Then we couldn't. We were forbidden for a very long time. We are back to allowing that. But it means we can do more.
So if I have a 3-unit or 4-unit, you're saying I only need to have 1 parking space?
Other than in some areas, yes.
Try to rent it though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's the legal, because our issue has always been the legal parking spaces, right? It's not what you can actually physically fit. It's what this 2.6 by 6 meters is. And that 2.6 by 6 meters couldn't overlap with the sidewalk, and it couldn't do this, and it couldn't do that. And we were having huge issues fitting them in. There is hundreds of a semi that every builder in town used to build 20, 30 years ago. They're all across the city. I've been Fergus, Ridley, Armstrong, it's not Armstrong, Kingsdale, Melanie, they're all in there. And they all have walk downs. And half of them we couldn't use because we couldn't meet the parking.
That's what I have on Sutherland.
I know, and now we can do it, as long as we can get that 1 legal parking space. There is still some areas where we can't, because it has to be fully on the lot line, or like within the lot. It can't be in the boulevard portion of the city property. The boulevard being from the lot line to the street, so usually where your sidewalk, your bell box, your cable box, all of that is situated. You couldn't put your parking spot there. Everybody parks there, but you couldn't have it as a legal parking space. So this going down to 1 is going to help us a lot. The max width at a point of intersection with the front and exterior lot line is 6 meters or 40% of the lot. That hasn't really changed, but you do get a minimum width of 2.6. We used to get a minimum width of 3. Because 3 was a driveway, 2.6 was your parking. I don't know. You can widen it as you go past. But where a driveway leads to a private garage, the max width beyond the required front setback or exterior setback is the width of the private garage. So you can't just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the number of spaces, so in the urban area, which is most of the city, there are now parking areas. PA 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's 1 parking space per lot, and PA 5 is 1 parking space per dwelling unit for the first 2 dwelling units on the lot. And in the rural, it's 1 per dwelling unit. So this is where I found all the maps. So the PA 5 is this lovely color, which is not showing up very well on my map. So it's the only area that you're gonna require 2. Everywhere else, you require 1 other than north of the city. So most of the
So
city will.
PA 3 is 1?
PA 5 is 1. Or sorry, PA 3 is 1. Let's go back here. 1, 2, 3, and 4 is 1 per lot. And 5 is 1 for the first 2 dwelling units. So once you hit 3 and 4, you'll have to provide another one.
Oh,
So it's great.
still
but
wonder if you have 2.
What were they thinking when they did that?
I don't know. I am
It
all
doesn't
for
make sense.
use all the pretty colors, right? Like why? But anyhow,
So Lisa, going back to the parking space, the 1.2 meter, let's say that you have a semi-detached situation or detached, you have a side entrance going to the basement or in the back. So you still have to leave the 1.2 meter.
No, I'm gonna get into that though. There's a whole bunch of changes with the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
So bicycle parking, don't worry about the first one, it was just in their chart.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Inspectors don't even look at it.
I know. So in theory, if somebody complained, they are going to make you put in the bicycle parking. It'll be 1 per dwelling unit, so if you have 4 units, you'll need 4. But it has to be provided in a secure enclosed location, so basically a shed, or within a vestibule or other interior floor area that doesn't form part of a dwelling unit. So I have argued till I was blue in the face about using side door, mudroom type things. They won't let me do it. Just plan on a shed. Put a little 7x7 shed in. You don't need a building permit for it. We're gonna draw it on the thing and you'll probably never install it. It's fine. So you do have to have a 1.2 meter pathway, which to Kazi's point, this is the only time you need 1.2 meters now,
Just for the bike?
just for the bike.
I thought that's more paramedic to use that.
But, and then they go in a
Yeah.
32 inches door with
Yeah.
a stretcher. So
Let's-
it doesn't make sense either.
No. The minimum dimensions for bicycle parking is 0.6 meters by 1.8 meters, which is like 2 feet by 6 feet roughly in horizontal length with minimum vertical clearance of 1.9, which I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around 6.5 or so. So you can't put them in like a wood shed that's only 4 feet high. That's all it's saying. It has to be provided with a bike rack where the lock is capable of securing the bicycle frame and front wheel, and 1 per dwelling unit. But again, building inspectors don't enforce it. They'll only really have to put it in if somebody complains.
Lisa, just to clarify, 1.2 meters is only if you
Only for the
need to put it
bicycle.
back. So you no longer have to provide that for the tenants, like if you have a side,
It's reduced.
entrance.
We're gonna do it right now. So they reduced the width from 1.2 to 1.1, which isn't huge, but there is some changes.
I'll be happy.
Yes. But just wait, because there are some changes.
It's a win.
It is a win, because sometimes I could not fit 1.2, but I could fit 1.1. But I actually, even better, we can actually reduce it. So it must be provided from the street line to the main exterior entrance for each unit. If they share an entrance, you only have to go to the one. In rural areas, it only has to go to the driveway just because it could be 500 feet long, whatever. Must be separately delineated from a required driveway or parking space through change of materials or line painting or similar means. And a vehicle can't park on top of any part of the walkway. It must be unobstructed up to a height of 2.1 meters, except hydro gas windowsills, chimneys, fireplace projections, cornices, gutters, pilasters, and other similar architectural features are now allowed to project inside. So all that stuff that we used to not be able to put a sidewalk in for, we can now put a damn sidewalk in at a reduced width. So, and then on top of that, you can overlap the walkway and the driveway, but you have to put up signage, which, whatever. You have to delineate it, paint your lines, whatever. But on existing lots that aren't a plan of subdivision and are currently created before the bylaw came into effect, only portions of the walkway are permitted to be less than 1.1 wide if an existing yard that is less than 1.1 in width, if designed in a manner that provides the greatest possible width based on the dimensions of the existing yard and 0.8 at the narrowest part. So if you only had 0.8 from the foundation to the lot line, we can now use it. And we have never been able to use that.
Wow.
We couldn't even get that through a minor variance before. So we can go down to 0.8, provided you're using the entire width between the foundation and the lot line. So that is a game changer in a lot of scenarios. So stuff that we were looking at 2 years ago that we could not do a single secondary suite in, we can now put 4 in all of a sudden, which is amazing. See, I told you it was exciting, right? Kind of. But think about how many, we were doing at one point about 10 zoning checks a day, and out of the 10, 2 were possible. And now all of a sudden, probably closer to 80% would be permitted. So that's a huge change. So accessory houses, so these are your detached houses. You're permitted on a lot with 3 or less dwelling units. So if you have 4 units in the main building, you can't put 1 in. It's a max of 1 dwelling unit per accessory house, so you can't put in a duplex unless you go and get a minor variance, and they may or may not allow it. If it's a huge yard, and say it's a massive yard that probably fit 3 times the house that's there, they would probably let the minor variance go to do that. Because all that you're ever gonna get in the one tiny little 500 square foot house in Kings Court is gonna be 1 unit. They would probably, not a guarantee, allow a minor variance to do 2 in a detached.
So no basement?
No basement. So really the rules on the detached accessory units haven't really changed. Has to be in the rear yard or the interior side yard, has to meet setbacks, except where it's already existing. It's a max lot coverage. Man, my typing skills were bad today, sorry. Max lot coverage is 10%, and the 10% you have to include the shed for the bicycle parking, sorry. But max height of 4.6 meters, which basically doesn't allow for a second story, and there's a max of 1 story. Now, the max of 1 story, I've been told by some of the planners it would permit a basement. I've been told by other planners it does not permit a basement. You would take a risk trying to do a basement right now. The rear and interior side yard must have privacy fence of 6 feet. And some exceptions or rules in plans of subdivisions, so new lots in particular, and lots with rear public laneways and private streets. The public laneways you have to really watch. There's a bunch of places downtown in Kings Court that have rear laneways. Some of them are public, some of them are private. And there's not any real great record as to which is which. So the city, you have to literally call for every lot, find out from the city whether it's public or private. Unfortunately, that's not a great one.
I think Geo Warehouse shows if it's owned by the city of Kingston.
That would be great if it
So
does.
any realtor could probably get you that info pretty easy.
Yeah. The city's own website doesn't show it. It shows the laneway, but it doesn't tell you whether it's private or public, which
So Geo Warehouse gives
pain.
you the owner. I only know this because I have one in my backyard. It's
yeah,
on my
and
estate.
I've vetted a couple and a couple were okay and a couple weren't. And you can see them on Google Maps when you zoom in overhead and you can see them. And so, but then sometimes you can't see them because people have started to encroach garages and sheds and trees and everything else, and they no longer exist essentially. Basically, the homeowners have started to reuse that land as their own, and that is where it's not public. So the legal nonconformance, so if it's an existing structure and it doesn't meet the current bylaw, but it's already there, so say it's 0.2 meters from the lot line, you get to use it because it's already there. You can't build a new one 0.2 meters from the lot line, but you can reuse the old one that's 0.2 meters from the lot line.
Can
So
you put an addition on that?
usually not, because you're usually already over the 10%.
Okay.
But there's some things, so I had a client that just bought a property on, oh shoot. I used to live around MacDonnell. Yeah, on MacDonnell, and it's a 2-story existing garage. So we get to use the 2nd story, which is nice. So, and it was built with a permit. I was actually able to pull the permit, go to the city, and I was like, so you gave a minor variance to build this with a 2nd floor way back when. Are you gonna let me use the 2nd floor? And they said yes. Because it, of this lovely little rule, which is nice. So the building code part. So things to consider are the number of units, the ceiling height, age, access, area of the rooms, windows, fire separations, plumbing, mechanical, laundry, and key plans. Key plans are what I was screaming at them about yesterday. So the number of units is important because at 2 units, it's considered a house if it's 2 units in one building, and it requires a BCIN qualification for designers in-house. Once we hit 3 units or more, it's considered a small building. And it requires a BCIN qualification in small buildings. If it's 6 units or more, if it's the 7th unit, just for instance, if you had a lot that allowed that, 7th unit becomes a large building.
So the part with the second unit, is that a new requirement that you have to have a BCIM qualified? You know?
You don't have to be BCN qualified if it's your primary residence. That's the only, in theory, how much they check that. If we complained, they have to check it and they could revoke the permit. But do I have time? Finished ceiling height. So this is one of the things where whether it's 2 units or 3 units actually makes a big difference. And how old it is. So at less than 5 years old, it's a new construction essentially. You have to be 7'6" and 9/16 finished for the living room, dining room, kitchen, over at least 75% of the area. The bedroom, same height, but over 50%. Basement, bathroom, halls, and laundry, you have to be 6'10" and 11/16. And funny enough, when it's 3 units and it's now considered a small building, you are stuck with the same even when it's over 5 years. Because the downgrade to 6'4" 3/4" is only when it's considered a house. So, and this is current building code. My understanding is some of this may change in January. They're just rolling out the changes in 2-hour sessions, there's 5 of them or something from the ministry, and then there's another 5 from the city. The problem is, having been in this long enough, I've seen them change things down to December 31st, and it goes live January 1st. So I don't care about the changes until it actually happens. I wanna know what I can do today. Because anybody that's looking at shopping right now needs to know what we can do now, not what we could potentially do in the future, maybe if they don't change things. So, but this may change in the new, because my understanding is they may start to look at the 3rd unit as a house. I don't know, we'll see. It's a big maybe, and it's a big, when you're buying a house at 500 grand, for instance, that's a big mistake if you're relying on being able to do 3 units at 6'4" 3/4". So access in a house, it has to exit directly to the exterior or a shared means of egress. So you can share a foyer and go out through the foyer, provided there's a second means of egress, must be provided for bedrooms by an egress level, for instance, if there's not a door on that floor level. If it's a slab on grade house and it's a single story and you've got 1 unit on the left and 1 unit on the right and they have a shared egress, they can do that with a window, for instance, but there's some rules. Small building, each unit has to have their own exit, or if a shared exit, must have 2 exits, and you can't consider them an egress window. And up until this week, I thought we could exit onto a balcony, and I'm fighting it, and I may or may not win. So, yes, we will talk later. But I was able to give them a bunch of code references. They're supposed to be checking, whatever. We'll see. So if we can do it, it's just the balconies may have to have stairs is the main thing. So it becomes a deck, not a balcony. Whatever, we'll figure it out. So area of the rooms. So when there's 1 bedroom, it's different than when there's 2 or more bedrooms. So what it actually refers to is a maximum of 2 people, but then it's 2 people per bedroom. So figure on 1 bedroom. So the living area, it gets, if you combine it, the living room portion has to be 118, but if there's 2 or more bedrooms, it has to be 145. So it's just a bunch of numbers, unfortunately, but it can make a difference. Built-in cabinets, it could be your IKEA closet units, or it could be a built-in closet. Either or would be considered built-in cabinets, but the square footage of rooms is reduced when it's with built-in cabinets. The bedrooms don't change between 1 and 2 bedrooms, other than a bachelor unit can be down to 45.21. So a bachelor living room, dining room, kitchen, bedroom can be a minimum of 145.3, which is nothing. Like, that's not even comfortable.
Yeah.
So we still have to fit a bathroom in there. Windows. So everybody just tells me, it's just a window, we can add it. And I'm like, do you know how many calculations I have to do for a freaking window? So When windows, I have to size them based on the natural ventilation and the natural lighting. An egress window, if there's no door directly to an exterior for in a house or a duplex, so not once you hit triplex, that has to be sized different, so it could make it bigger. Adding a window has other multiple calculations, so the max number of unprotected openings. So what we're trying to do is stop the spread of fire from one house to another house. So there can only be so many windows on the side of a house when you're so far from the lot line. It increases the further you get away. We have to do the lintel sizes for masonry and the header sizes for the framing. Maximum of 25% the length of a foundation, which is cumulative, so all the windows along the foundation wall. And a max 3'11" wide with it a P-inch. And if it's ICF, good luck. We will need a P-inch because of the rebar.
Going back to the egress, if I have a duplex and I wanna add a third unit in the garage that's not attached, does the duplex now, do those 2 units have to have 2 exits?
No, because the third unit's detached, it's
Okay.
completely different. So we're only looking at it when it's 2 units in one building.
3 units in one building.
Yeah, 3 units in one building, all attached.
Same
Makes
as
it
for
a small
ceiling
building.
height? The ceiling height's the same thing? Okay.
So once if it's attached and we're 3 units, it becomes a small building versus a house.
Oh, good.
If
Okay.
it's 2 units and one detached, this is a house, this is a house.
Okay.
So, window wells, if they're less than 6 inches above grade, we have to put in a window well. And we need windows in bedrooms, dining rooms, and living rooms, and there's no exceptions. And even then, you still have to have electric lighting in all of the rooms to get away with just those areas. So fire separations, the rating of the wall depends on the number of units in the building, whether it's 5 years old or less than 5 years old. The ceiling may be reduced if it's only 2 units in total in the building because it's a house and the smoke alarms are interconnected, but it may not stand up at LTB if there's no soundproofing. So you have to be careful because we can go down to 15-minute rating on the ceiling right now if it's a house. However, if you had a tenant complain about the noise and there was absolutely no effort made to dampen the sound, and 5/8 drywall has sound dampening proof properties, you could end up having to put the sound dampening in. So just do it right the first time and make it 30 minutes, so it's not an issue. The interconnected smoke detectors also fail continually, which is a service nightmare.
Lisa,
Yeah.
sorry, fire rated doors.
Yeah.
It's easy to find fire rated doors. And the cheapest ones are like Home Depot fire rated doors. But the jams aren't fire rated.
So you're supposed to.
So, but it seems that they're more interested in the door having the fire
Yeah.
rating and everything, and the jams not so important, unless they require a steel all around, that type of
Yeah.
thing, right?
It's different when it's 2 units versus, it depends on the fire rating, is what it really comes down to. If it's a 30-minute fire separation, then it's a 20-minute door, it can be done through solid wood, period. So we don't care about the jams. If it's more than 30 minutes, then like if you're a 1-hour fire separation, then the door has to be more, it has to be a 45-minute door, and you are supposed to take the type X drywall, you bring it down the wall, you go across the jam and you go back and then you put your door in place. So it's just a detail. Do they overlook it all the time? Yes. But
Depends on the
technically,
inspector.
it depends on the inspector and the experience of the inspector. Technically, it's supposed to go out and around, but wood does have a rating, so and if it's 20 minutes, there's really not much of a rating there. The whole point of a fire separation is not to prevent the building from burning down. It's going to burn down. It's literally, the idea is that there's 20 minutes from the time the fire starts to get people out.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So, who was in Kingston when we did our big helicopter rescue downtown on Patry's building when the construction fire happened? So, big construction fire happens. The only fire separation that was in place at the time was in the front stairwell. That was the only one that was still standing at the end of the fire. Having said that, it's still not perfect. Fire separations are rated to 750 degrees. That fire got over 1,000 degrees. It melted the street, it melted half the adjoining properties. We had to demolish 3 other buildings, well, if I remember right. And we had to do major repairs at the Legion next door. Like you will never stop the fire from burning the building down and there not being anything left. You can just get as many people out as possible. We were just really lucky on that one that nobody, other than the crane operator, nobody was injured, and he was the only person injured that day. And it wasn't life-altering injuries for once.
Lisa, was there any change for the sitting space that is a drywall already? They were allowed to go just, I know other than the noise factor, the tenant may not like it, or it's not gonna be sound absorption, but 5/8 drywall on existing drywall ceiling, that was sufficient.
Yeah.
Are they still allowing that in certain areas?
So far, yes.
Okay, that hasn't changed.
So, provided it's not new, it's the less than 5 years and more than 5 years.
More than 5 years.
If it's more than 5 years, right now, 30 minutes, which is one layer of 5/8 over top of the existing, is fine.
Sure.
If it's under 5 years, you have to put soundproofing in. You don't have a choice because the STC rating applies.
So you have to take it down, put
Rock wall in.
insulation and the resilient channel, and then 5/8 drywall.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're probably better off to do that anyway.
That's right.
You are.
Otherwise, you're gonna be dealing with noise issues all the time.
Yeah, even with like going above and beyond, you're still gonna end up with noise complaints.
Yeah.
That's regular.
Gonna reduce that.
It'll reduce them. You're always gonna have taken people. My own tenant is still complaining about a ceiling fan that she can't hear. She can feel the vibrations through Sonoplan, 5/8 Rockwell on resilient channel, or 5/8 Starl on resilient.
How did you like the sauna pan? Did you think it was worth it?
I think it's fantastic.
10 out of 10.
I would use
Yeah.
I will never do a house.
So that's good.
Yeah. The only time that I would say don't use Sonopan is if you don't have the ceiling height.
Okay, yeah, it's like quick thick, isn't it?
It's about the same thickness as drywall,
Okay.
but it's,
Yeah, it's 3/4 thick, it's a shitty product to work with, but the result is fantastic.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So it's worth it.
and
So I have it in my house and I have a tenant downstairs and my TV is right above the bedroom and I crank up the TV at 100. I go downstairs and you just hear a whisper. It's that good, sir.
yeah,
But if you have duct system going through the house, don't install it for nothing.
Okay.
There's no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Because sound's gonna go through the duct system.
yeah, that's the problem. So Sonopan provides a continuous layer of soundproofing, whereas the Rockwell, you have to jam in around all the ductwork and plumbing and everything else. So having that continuous layer is your best bet, but we don't always have headroom. There's sometimes people are literally buying it and the ceiling height's 6'6" and we need 6'4" 3/4 finished and we still have to get flooring and 5/8 drywall on. So you can't always, it is preferred. So plumbing, a shut-off valve has to be provided for every suite. Where new plumbing is required now, a backwater valve is required on the building drains entering the building and on each branch serving the additional residential unit. The water heater, and somebody else argued with me about this week. A water heater has been required to be equipped with a mixing valve for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now.
Yeah.
If you put one in and you don't have the mixing valve on, that's great, but the second you open a permit that has anything to do with plumbing, put that damn thing on, because they're gonna make
The
you.
new hot water thing comes with a mixing valve in it.
Yeah, the tankless ones, you have to set it so that it can't be increased above. You can't just turn down a water heater though. People don't know that. You can get Legionnaire's disease and you could die if you don't have the hot water tank. So you have your hot water tank, the pipe comes up out of the top, you have a mixing valve that puts the cold water in and the hot water in and mixes them together before it goes through the house. You need that, otherwise you could die. So don't just turn down your water heater, please. I hear people doing that all the time. I'm like, don't. The water from the street may not be adequate for 3 to 4 units and may need to be upsized. For 3 units, we can sometimes do a manifold if it's over 5 years. If it's under 5 years, chances are it's 1 inch from the street and we won't have an issue. At 4 units, we've been told to expect to replace the line to the street. So mechanical, yes.
For the water heater, if you have 2 to 3 units, do you have to have a separate heater for each unit, or is it just, you can have just one big tank?
You could have one big tank for everybody, technically. If you're separating utilities, I wouldn't, I would do one per unit. Cause then then they're in charge of paying that bill, for one, and then 2, if tenant A doesn't pay the utilities, then tenant B is not cut off from, like this 60-40 split thing, I'm not a big fan of.
And is it better that you do the hot water tanks, or you do the on-demand per unit?
The hot water tanks are cheaper and you'll go through less water.
Well, ideally, you rent it through Kingston Utilities and you flip the bill to the tenants. So you do whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah,
Seriously.
but the
On-demand are so expensive.
The on-demands are so expensive, they're great when we don't have enough space.
Yeah.
Because they take up about as much space as an electrical panel. And it's well built. So I like them from that standpoint, but you will stand there and you will run the water for 5 minutes before you actually get hot water.
Right.
So they are a European thing. In Europe though, that tankless unit is in your bathroom. And then you have a tankless unit in your kitchen that serves that. And so it's like 5 feet away max. When it's on the other side of the house, you have to fire it up, it has to heat the water, and then you've gotta go through all the water that's in the lines to get that heated water to you. And that's the biggest problem, whereas the hot water tank just sits there and runs constantly. So a duct type smoke detector can be used in a furnace for up to 4 units, which is great. So if you're sharing a furnace between units, you've gotta put one in. It allows us to do it if it's over 5 years old only, but it allows us to share a furnace if we have to. In new construction, expect to have fire dampers if a shared furnace or if ductwork goes through a fire separation. And if you're splitting utilities, expect to separate your heat sources. So think creatively. So typically what we are gonna see is the existing unit is gonna be fed with furnace because the ductwork's there, the furnace is there. And it usually has central air already, which is great, and it's usually feeding a main floor unit. For the basement unit or the 3rd and 4th unit, do it with mini splits, so you have AC ideally, if you can afford it. It is expensive, or do electric baseboard. I've heard some people haven't had to put HRVs in. Every time I submit a plan with electric heat, they tell me I have to put an HRV in. It is in the building code and there is no exemption that says that you don't have to put an HRV in, unfortunately. But sometimes it's forced and sometimes it's not. And I can't tell you the answer because that could vary by tomorrow. Right now, they're saying yes, tomorrow they could say no. Like sometimes your head spins. So laundry, every unit shall have laundry in their own unit or access to a shared laundry, but it doesn't need a lot of space. So quite often we'll put a stackable unit in the kitchen, beside the refrigerator or on the other end of the kitchen, whatever. It could be in the bathroom, in a closet. I've actually done some that are the washer and dryer in one unit and we put it in the kitchen islands. So what they did was a 4-foot deep island, the laundry was on the back, the sink was on the front, great. Currently, it can't be in an exit. This is one of the changes that is happening. So if you have a
Mudroom?
If both units are exiting through the mudroom, it's technically not supposed to be there. But they've been letting it go a little bit if it already exists, and sometimes I can fire right around it, and it's hit and miss again. Key plans. So this was my fight for since Friday. So in the past, we have only needed to provide key plans, so a floor plan of unit 3 and 4 when we get to more than 2 units. Apparently, despite getting hundreds of permits without them, they are now going to make me get them for 2 units. So the second you put a second unit in, they want a key plan to show what is up above. I actually fought it, and it could be that the client is somebody that likes to do things without a permit, and it could be me. Either way, I didn't win. So, having said that, I looked at this list because this was the reasoning they gave me. It was a walkout basement, and the laundry was already shown on the plans for the main floor. Anyhow, we had already purchased an iGuide camera last week to do key plans for units 2 and 3 in the triplexes. So we will now be doing iGuide plans for the units that we're not doing work on. We will have to charge for them, and I will not be doing it for realtors for real estate photography. We are literally doing the floor plan with it. They'll let me use that, I can import it onto my drawings and place it on. It is the biggest pain in my ass, especially because we do 150 secondary suites or third or fourth units a year out of the 275 projects. Do you think I have time to go and send 2 staff members back to do iGuides for all those properties? So whatever's sitting there that hasn't been issued yet, I'm gonna be having to send people back. Or you can provide a sketch. And some of them they've been letting go and some of them they haven't, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason. I was told it was to confirm that there is no common spaces. I'm like, it was a walkout basement. There is no common space. What do you need? And there's no access up.
I think it's for fire safety, because that's part of the rental, the licensing program that was coming through. That was something that they were pushing for, is every single rental property, they want the fire department to be able to open up PDFs and see where the bedrooms are.
So management told me that they've been requiring this for 2+ years, and I was like, no, you haven't.
So it was a big thing with the rental licensing, they got pushed back, and then the guy, Curtis Smith, left the city, so right now they're looking at registration, but it might not even happen.
I'm not against rental licensing. I know that's not popular opinion, but to Cassie's point, how do you know whether something's legal or not legal? Belleville has a licensing system that you can go on to an overlay on the map and you can literally look it up and it's there. And that makes the legal unit worth more than the illegal unit immediately. So there's pluses and minuses to it, don't get me wrong. We do not have enough fire inspectors for them actually to go through them, so I'm not that worried. That's not gonna happen. It's gonna just be pushed off. They might go through them, but the second there's a complaint, they're gonna go through them anyhow. So all that a registry with licensing does, I don't agree with there being an annual cost. However, it does increase the value of your home because you can prove very quickly whether you're the second, third, or fourth owner, you can prove that your unit's legal. So there are pluses and minuses to it, especially with the third units because they aren't on the resale market very often. You'd be able to see how many there are in the city and they could probably get a better idea of what they're worth. I think there's some pluses and minuses to it, and I'm not sure that there is a right answer. I don't think they have staff to deal with it anyhow. I can tell you right now, they don't have staff to deal with it as much as they think they do. They don't. But there's, the licensing thing would be good, but. So their reasoning is confirm there's no comment, to ensure laundry, if it's being constructed, is in an area that will be code compliant. So the house that I'm arguing about with them, the laundry room for the main floor unit was in the freaking basement. So I'm like, it's there, like it's already shown on the drawing. To ensure that when the final inspection takes place, they know the location where the upstairs laundry is added. Again, it was already on there. To show if there are load-bearing elements not indicated in the basement, only drawings. That's the only thing that they had anything on this list. And to have an accurate count of the number of bedrooms in a layout that currently exists. When you apply for a permit, you have to put the bedroom count in on dash.
So what's going to be the extra charge for this?
So it's gonna be about $160. I bought it from Cassie. I'm not gonna undercut her for one, and two, by the time I pay 2 staff to be on site, the extra time to do it. So, but it'll just be added to everybody's invoices and, well, not invoices, but to the quotes. We'll show it. I did point out that this is not on the City of Kingston's
I
website.
seriously think it's reasonable, your price is reasonable, it's not like it's through the roof and everybody's gonna yell.
Would you let the clients supply it already if they had
Yeah,
had
if
a
you have
copy
it.
from when they bought the house with the
Absolutely.
listing? Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, we're still going to do the unit that, I actually bought it for the unit that we're doing the work in,
Yeah,
because
makes
then
sense.
we have a photo of everything in 360 degrees. But it's the time involved in doing the additional units, especially because sometimes we're already 2+ hours out on site. You add going through all these other units in, we're gonna be at least another hour, if not
Or
more.
you're gonna do it one visit, you do everything.
So, and I, especially after what happened to the Realtor in Toronto, I send 2 staff at all times. The only one that goes by themselves is me.
Oh, yes, right.
So we don't attend a house, especially some of the situations we get into with investors, unfortunately. You buy crappy houses and you have crappy tenants in them already. There has been some times where they were looking for a Narcan kit on site for one of the site visits in Belleville. So we don't go by ourselves other than me. I'm the only one. And even then, I don't usually go. It's only if it's a problem or something specific. But there are some grants, which is good. This one, everybody in this room is not gonna want this. This is only for affordable housing. It's a detached ARU, up to 50% or 40,000, whichever is less. It's done as a forgivable loan, basically to become a second mortgage. The interior, so if you're doing a basement or interior renovation, put one in, same thing, only applies if it's an affordable unit, 50% or 30,000, whichever is less. The accessibility grant, so when they presented this to, well, a couple different groups that I was involved in, we all went, we can all get the affordable grant, you only need a wider, because originally you could get this 5,000 if you met the minimum code for accessible, which is a wider front door and grab bar blocking around the tub and slab on grade. They did increase it. It's still not bad though. You have to have clear entrance doors at 900 millimeters, which is 35 and something inches. Increased hallway width to 1100 most of the time in the detached units. We're open concept. You're literally rolling from the living room into a bedroom with no hallway, or there's a short hallway that we have to make it 4 feet, essentially. Install of grab bars, which will cost you a couple $100, and accessible shower dimensions, so expect it to be wider. And control heights, so all your electrical has to be at 1200, which is 4 feet. So, and knee space at the kitchen sink. So you're gonna install a desk piece basically here, and you're going to roll into, you won't have a cabinet under your sink. So, but $5,000. So no other terms or conditions. It doesn't have to be affordable housing. It's just $5,000. So it's not bad. For some of this you would be doing anyhow, and chances are pretty good we would already have made the front door 36 inches, but making the bedroom and the bathroom door 36 inches is really not that big a deal. Sometimes it's tight, but. So this one is one that they've come up with since talking to us, which is good. I emailed a bunch of people about this one last week when I found it. So there is now a rough-in grant for a detached house of $5,000 to install the rough-in servicing. So if you are doing your secondary suite, you haven't done your detached unit yet, but you know you're gonna do it, you can apply to the city to rough in that plumbing so it's ready to go, and you'll get $5,000. So that one is a sweet one. It cannot be combined with any other incentive, so you can't combine it with the affordable, unfortunately, but $5,000 to do something you were already gonna do. Why not? The ARU servicing constraint area, so if it's in an area that is one of those red zones or whatever, you can have 50% for 10,000 to upgrade an existing half-inch water service. However, this one does have a restraint where you have to put it with the detached or interior ARU incentives, which is that affordable housing. So it could work, it could not, depending on what you're doing. But there are other programs. So they only advertise those ones. But if you're doing backwater valves, you could apply to the Utilities Kingston for the preventative plumbing program. I'm not going to guarantee that you will get it, but you should be able to get one of them paid for through it. This program has been running since 2012. I've seen hundreds of people getting it, thousands actually. So it's a pretty easy one. It does have to be done by a qualified contractor, which is on the City of Kingston. Utilities, I'll give you a list of contractors. The applicant has to be the owner of the home, and the home is a single semi-row house, duplex or triplex. So it's a good one. It's with Utilities Kingston directly. And then I actually found some on South Frontenac's website. So this is an Ontario-wide grant for the multi-generational home renovation tax credit for secondary suites if you're building one for seniors or adults with a disability to live with family. And you might also be eligible for the Canada Greener Homes Initiative if it involves energy retrofits. So if you're putting insulation in and upping the insulation, you could apply for that. And there's our contact info. And that was a lot of information. I am so sorry. There was a lot of Does anybody have questions? I know I answered a lot along the way.
Just real quick, something small. Anybody in particular having issues with water? And I have a friend in Belleville who's got a serious issue with the water and the water heaters, and they're always corroding, etc.
Every 4 years.
It
Yeah,
could be
something
their, do they have a water softener and the water softener set too high? Because that'll corrode.
No,
quick.
just off city water, straight into the water heaters.
Could be adding a water softener.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. He said multiple properties he's had like water heaters just blowing out on him every 4 or 5 years.
Mine does,
Like
but I'm
corrosion.
in the country and we have treated, we have a lot.
Right.
Do you know the brand of the water heater?
No, I didn't ask.
I mean, if you buy like very, very cheap
Yeah,
water heaters,
So
they
there's
will
that
corrode
too,
way
yeah.
faster because they don't have an inside casing.
Right.
But I
You
mean,
can
in
get alarms
Belleville, I don't know
for
what
it,
the water's like. But.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the same, you should talk to other people in Belleville, because if it's a Belleville problem, other people are having the problem too.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah.
citywide, it wouldn't be isolated to his house.
For
There's
sure.
nothing in his house that would cause the water heater to go.
I know.
If he's on municipal water.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
municipal water. Mine's
Yeah.
on a well and I have an electric one. It dies, but it always dies within the warranty period and we take it back to Bardon's, pay the difference of $50 to get a new one that we take home and plug back in.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they are, I would check the warranty on them, sometimes
Yeah.
it's just a warranty.
Is changing zoning difficult or costly?
It can be. Sometimes though, it's not always required. I would hire a planning consultant because it will get you through it faster. And there's other reasons for a planning consultant too. I can show you actually a good property. City zoning map. I had clients buy a property on Elmer. And this is where I called Yuko, my planner, and I was like, can we do this? So they bought it around $500,000 for a duplex with the hope of converting a garage. The garage is not convertible, but this particular property has rear access to another street, and it's huge. So,
That's why I have 710 Elmer Crescent and you have the street at the back.
yeah, so we're severing it.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, and so,
Well, she's looking.
there we go. Sorry, some of the zoning maps you can't see very much.
Streets.
So this is a carport, so we can't do anything with it. We got 2 units in here, no problem. And they were like, we'd like to change that. And I was like, I think I can do you one better. Let me follow. We're severing it. This is now going to be a purpose-built 4-unit.
Nice.
So we're knocking down the garage and new construction,
Sweet.
stacked. I can go up to 3 stories with my licensing. So we're gonna do 3 stories plus a basement unit, and it'll be a 4-unit. All of them are identical, 2-bedroom, 3-unit in the West End. And
That's amazing.
so that's where though a good planner is good, because I called and I was like, can I? And he's like, yes. Let me look at it. And they looked at it in a lot more detail. Because what triggered me was the fact that there was a rear access. Now, having said that, that does not always work. I had another client approach me about a property on Montreal Street, and it was a commercial property, and it looked like the road was coming in on a cul-de-sac into the side. And I was like, can we sever this? And he was like, no. So, because there wasn't a bulb for a turning radius on the end of it, and so it became a lot more complicated to
Could
do.
you type 710 Elmer Crescent?
And your zoning change too, if you change your zoning from commercial to residential, then you're gonna have to go through site plan control, which is probably gonna be phase 1 and phase 2 environmental. So I'd plan, if you're gonna buy something like that, go for like a 12 month closing date.
I don't know why I
It
brought
takes
up.
forever, it takes forever to get that zone, to get that site plan control done. And you're not allowed to work on it while you're waiting.
The difference with yours
Sit
is I
there
think
and
yours
carry
is
it.
shorter.
Is it something that could be
So
considered?
somebody was trying to buy it, everything's looking good, and then, could get financing, and then they want.
It's tricky, yeah.
They want this
I don't think so, because I don't think you get enough time.
But I guess the lady's making a bunch of money off of it.
No, it's only about 108 feet.
So that wouldn't work?
I mean, talk to Yuko, maybe, but because it's 30 meters, which is roughly 100 feet. The other one is,
Collins big. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, so it's, this is the short side.
Yeah, I see.
It's almost double in length, not quite. But if you could get a hold of next door. Yeah, any in that longer strip would be ideal, but it was literally that much. So it is, you can get creative. The same people actually brought, I don't know if I can pull it up. So $15.99 and came on the market for about, I think it was under 500. I don't know if the realtor plans are still up. No, they aren't.
So no, that other one, garage was not convertible. Why was the garage not convertible?
It was falling down. We could have used it,
Technically could have.
but why would you use that, get one more unit when we could get 4, right? And- Yeah, and even like your return on investment for severing it and having 2 separate buildings that could be sold to 2 different purchasers. So this particular property was one that we looked at too. And I wish I could pull up the realtor plans for it, but we can get 3 in the main house and we can get 1 in the detached
The one
existing
with
garage.
the big living room and the red carpet. A nice little.
I know, I called and I was like, so I got this, and he went, okay. So they bought it knowing the 4th unit may not happen, but if it could happen, it would be great.
How much did they pay?
I believe just over 5 was the final,
Yeah, I think they were asking something like 480 or something like that.
480 or 490, yeah. But it did go into a bidding war, but they did win. So there have been properties that we've been working on this 4-unit thing months ago, knowing that we may or may not be able to do the 4th.
Approximately how long it takes to settle it down, like if you want to do what?
They started in June, I believe, and they're almost through. Right now, they might be waiting for their designer to do a concept drawing, just saying. Everybody might be waiting for their designer to do a concept drawing. They've been very patient, because we have multiple property, or multiple projects with them, they know. But, yeah, it is backlogged a little.